Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 70th episode of Visioncon Live, your go-to nerdy talk show. I'm your host, Zach Wilson. You didn't come here to see me today. You came to meet the man of the hour. He's Nick Valentine and Codsworth from Fallout 4, Mercer Frey from Skyrim, Garrett from the Thief franchise, just to name a few. He's a legendary actor with a voice as smooth as silk. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome the one, the only, Stephen Russell. Stephen, how are we doing today?
I'm great. What an introduction. Thank you, Zach. That's fantastic.
It was well worth it. And Stephen, I got to be honest, you are in a select group of people that I have had the honor of working with throughout my years as a host and MC for things, because you are a person that when I reached out to you, I thought there's no way in hell that you would actually get back to me. I have been a fan of yours since I was a wee little lad. So you were just one of them that I thought, you miss every shot you don't take. So it's suffice to say, when I actually did get an email back from you, I about shot out of my socks.
Well, thank you. I'm very honored that you feel that way, and I'm really happy to do this and chat with you and chat with the fans and talk about all this good stuff.
Well, we'll go ahead and get started. So, Stephen, you have had a wide array of roles throughout the years, and we don't have time, unfortunately, to get to all of them, but there are four, yes, guys, kind of four in particular that we will touch on. But before we get to that, I did want to start off with how we got here, Stephen. Was showbiz always the plan, or did something happen kind of later on in life that brought us to where we are today?
Was it always the plan? It was always one plan. Um, and I think I've wanted and tried to be active as a performer for many years of my many years now, and but I had kind of put acting aside for a while to concentrate on music, which is another great love of mine, and and is also a very difficult profession. And I was concentrating on that at a time when a friend asked me to be in a community theater production of A Christmas Carol, and I at first turned him down, but he was persistent, and for some reason, probably because he didn't have anybody else, uh, uh, kept after me, and I ended up doing it, and kind of falling back in love with acting in the process of doing it, and that just sort of uh, uh, inspired me to keep pushing, keep seeing, okay, I've done this. What happens if I do that? I did this. What happens if I go a little further afield and try auditioning for something that's a little bit out of my comfort zone? And eventually started working professionally. And I was doing a lot of theater and a little bit of work on film and industrials and narrations and a lot of voiceover work with commercials and I was getting for a time a lot of work on medical applications where I was playing a very serious doctor and having to talk about gastroesophageal motility disorder and things like that and I was uh, contacted by an agent to go audition for what they were calling a CD-ROM project at the time, and this was in 1997. And I went along to the audition, and I've told this story a number of times, but usually, usually when you go to an audition, you have a pretty good idea how it went when you walk out, and if you didn't hear anything in 2 or 3 days, you pretty much know you didn't get the job. It's fine. You move on to the next thing. 6 months go by after this audition, and I get a call from Eric Brocious at Looking Glass Studios asking me to come in and read for something. And at the time, I had completely forgotten this audition that I had gone to. This is December now, and I had gone to this in May of 1997, gone to the audition. Um, but it turned out to be the first Thief game, and that's was how I got started in the business of voice acting. But it was all kind of a continuum of doing other kinds of acting and other voice work. Yeah. So that's it.
So we'll go ahead and talk about our first character. Like I said, we have 2 and 4 because we're actually going to skip the famous plug zone this one, just to make sure we have time for every single question that we get. So the first one is now, this one is going to be 2 characters in specific, guys, from one of the most anticipated sequels ever to be created, from one of the most popular franchises in video game history. That franchise, of course, is Fallout 4. So the first character that I wanted to talk about is one of, if not my favorite video game character ever. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the one, the only, Nick Valentine. So before we dive deep into him, Stephen, just give us a brief overview of the character, maybe how you got the part, any fun anecdotes of playing Nick, anything at all.
Well, this was my second foray into the Fallout universe. I had done work on Fallout 3, and I believe this was my third or fourth game working with Bethesda too. So we were kind of known quantities to each other, and they had. I remember Mark Lampert, who was the audio director at Bethesda, still is the audio director, uh, asking me about this particular character and kind of describing him to me as a film noir kind of detective, but also a robot, and it sounded really intriguing, and I was excited about it at the time because I love this whole world, and you know, the Raymond Chandler and Dashiell Hammett, James M. Cain film noir novels, and or mystery novels rather, and so it was right up my alley. I've watched tons of those movies and read all the literature, so I felt like I knew this character even going into it. But then the first session, to get the script and see how well this guy was written and how complex, and I mean, he's got this moral center that I think is what makes him so intriguing in the midst of all this chaos in the Fallout world. There's this there is this mechanical being, for want of a better term, who has more soul, more heart than a lot of the humans that you interact with in that game. And I love that contrast. And it didn't take too long for us to find the voice. We went back and forth a couple of times, but I think I got it pretty close right off the bat. And so we did a few sessions, and then there were a couple of months where they were writing new scripts and the game was progressing. And the next time I came back into the studio, Mark said, "I got to tell you, the buzz on this guy, on this character, is really strong in the office. I'm really feeling like he's going to end up being a fan favorite in this game," and it was very gratifying to find out that that's exactly what happened too. So, and I love the guy to this day. It's been really fun. Part of the fun for me too is, as a big Red Sox fan, the fact that he has his office in Fenway Park. Yeah.
It was fitting. But no, you definitely nailed the kind of film noir, like a detective noir side of it. And I think the most dramatic and most compelling thing about Nick is, if there was ever anybody in that game, which is chock full of compelling characters, that would have the right to have animosity towards mankind, it would be Nick Valentine. He had been constantly, just jerked around and, screwed over. And yet he still has all of this compassion in him. And the fact that you have to go literally out of your way to make him an enemy, I just find very inspiring.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's that contrast that's so absorbing. So I mean, you just feel for the guy right off the bat, I think. So
And then at the same time, you also want to emulate him, But in a game full to the brim with dynamic and compelling characters, Nick Valentine does sit as one of the most memorable characters in not only Fallout 4, but I would argue gaming history. So while playing everyone's favorite synthetic detective, was there ever a point where you kind of began to relate to him on a personal level?
Oh yeah, I mean almost immediately. He's I don't know whether um, what's interesting about this process is I never really get to interact while we're working on a game with the writers, except occasionally they'll be listening in on a session and giving comments and things like that. But I just had this feeling while I was working on it that they had really captured uh, some some basic human thing that I don't know how to describe this. It's I felt such empathy for him right off the bat, and wanted him to succeed. And I think his storyline is so compelling that um, it was fascinating once I finally got to see the whole game too, to see because when you're working on just the reading dialogue, you're not seeing the big picture at all. So to finally get a chance to experience how he behaved in relation to the other characters in that world was just mind blowing. I think that's one of the games that I've worked on that I really feel like you always hope that anything that you work on is going to be successful and meaningful for people. But that exceeded any hopes that I had in such a big way. That
And
was that
he
was
was also a character that really blew out the expectations of, I think, Bethesda as well, because they devoted one of the DLC packs, Far Harbor, all to Nick. Nick was a very central part of that DLC. So I think they found and saw, like you kind of mentioned, all the buzz involved with Nick and kind of rode that high with Far Harbor, which also is by far my favorite DLC in the game as well.
Yeah, it's pretty great, isn't it?
Hmm.
And to get to do Dima in that as well was oh my gosh, that was just crazy and such a great experience. That was a good year. That was a good year, Zach.
It certainly was. But so the next character is also going to be Fallout 4. And I think the thing that separates Fallout 4 from the rest of the franchise is that the followers really took center stage and really helped develop the world more, because in previous games, the followers were definitely part of it, but I don't think they were as integral as to the plot. Now this next character is with you for about day one of the game. So the
Mhm.
next character I want to talk about is everybody's favorite robo butler. Let's talk about Codsworth. So like we did with Nick, give us just a brief overview of the character, any fun anecdotes involved with getting or playing the part, anything at all.
Well, Codsworth is one of the Mr. Handy robots, and I had done Mr. Handy's in Fallout 3. Uh, and I was so excited about the decision to make Codsworth one of the companions uh, and be able to do Codsworth more in depth. The thing that was so fun about Codsworth was just his sense of humor and his jokes, and I'm just I am not only a cheap laugh, but I like a lot of actors. I love to make people laugh too. So, and there were a lot of times when we were working on Codsworth and the engineer, and I would just crack up and probably very unprofessional, but it was again the writing. It was just so sharp and so funny. Just such a gift, and I love doing that voice too. He's I find myself sometimes doing Codsworth.
I remember that you set the internet ablaze, or at least you helped set the internet ablaze when the launch, or not the launch trailer, the promo trailer for Fallout 4 dropped, where it showed that depending on what name you input into the game as your character's name, Codsworth, you could actually respond with that name. And so I remember initially putting in my name Zach into it, and apparently that wasn't one of the predetermined ones. So I had to switch it to Zachary, and I just thought that was funny.
Huh. We
But
did Zach? Wow. I would have thought that we did.
see, I thought it was Zachary, which is understandable because I spell it with a K. So that's also kind of probably one of the reasons they probably just cut the middleman and just had it do the long form Zachary.
Well,
Yeah.
Mr. Zach, I apologize for not putting your name in the first place.
There it is. But so, and this also kind of goes with Demo as well, because you've played many characters in games that have kind of interacted with themselves, both, Skyrim, Fallout 4, Fallout 3, and, Codsworth is, no exception. So when something like that happens, where some of your characters have to interact with one another, you're essentially having a conversation with yourself. Is that ever difficult, or does it provide kind of a unique and fun challenge as an actor?
It's almost a non-issue because the lines are all recorded separately.
Hmm.
So when I'm in a scene like that, even if I've already recorded the other lines already, I'm really just focused on the character I'm doing right then. And it is a little bit jarring then when I get to play the game later, say, "Oh, that's me too. That's." So it's not as difficult as it might seem. I'll tell you what is difficult. I have on uh, I think only one occasion been given a script where I was asked to play two characters and they didn't separate out.
Oh.
So I had to go back and forth line to line, and that was a challenge, just keeping those sounds in your head and trying to be a split personality.
Well, speaking of kind of a split personality, the next character is from a game that, similarly with Fallout 4, one of the most anticipated sequels of all time. And now in this game, you voice countless characters, but I wanted to touch on one of the biggest ones, which is obviously the protagonist, or at least seems to be protagonist, but ends up being an antagonist, and also the Guild Master of the Thieves Guild. Let's talk about the one and only Mercer Frey.
Mm.
So again, like we have been doing, just give us a brief overview of the character, fun anecdotes involved with getting and playing the part, anything at all.
Um, Boy, this was the second game I worked on for Bethesda, and they had the first one being Fallout 3. By this time, I had gotten to know the folks there well enough that they knew that I had a certain facility and range that they could call on to ask me to voice a number of different characters. So I was a lot of people in Skyrim. And honestly, Zach, at first I didn't even know that this was part of the Elder Scrolls series that I was working on.
Really?
Probably, yeah, probably some of your other guests have talked about often when we're given scripts, they're indicated by code names,
Hmm.
just for keep trade secrets secret. And we don't necessarily know right off the bat. You have suspicions sometimes, and sort of guess at things, but you don't get that confirmation until later that you're working on a big franchise game like the Elder Scrolls. And I had not really uh, been that familiar with the Elder Scrolls um, going into it, so it was kind of a whole new experience for me. Um, though there was somebody in my household, one of my kids, who was a huge fan of the series, and when it was finally discovered that that was what I was working on, that was a big day in our house. It was kind of fun. Um, so uh, Mercer Frey was one of those characters that I think was recorded in a week of sessions where we were doing five or six or more characters. And at first, he didn't really stand out to me. Sometimes you don't discover these iconic moments for a character until you, as I was talking about earlier, get to experience the whole game and see things in context. So I think he caught me a little bit by surprise, I guess is what I'm trying to say. That I didn't really know what we were dealing with there, but the deeper we got into working on the game, the more work I had, the more sessions I had. I thought, oh yeah, this guy's going to be special too. So that was really fun. Yeah.
To your credit, you voiced a lot of characters in this game. I mean, anywhere from a talking dog to Mercer Frey, the guild master of the entire Thieves Guild. So I'm sure some of them kind of get lost in translation. But you had worked with Bethesda before, so you know that maybe not you didn't know that this was going to be an Elder Scrolls game while you were recording, but you definitely know once you found out, I'm sure you realized that it's a Bethesda game. You know, Bethesda doesn't have a habit of making bad games, so this would probably be a big success. So when you did learn that it was going to be the next entry in the Elder Scrolls series, did you ever feel any additional pressure of whether or not you might have, did these characters justice, or was there any fear that maybe, some people may not like the characters as much?
Ooh, I don't recall thinking that at all, and maybe it's just the passage of time, and I've forgotten it. One of the things that really stood out for me about Skyrim was uh, Mark Lampert would tell me about the open world concept of this. And I found that really intriguing, and the fact that you could just wander off I actually had trouble wrapping my head around it for a while. So you mean you don't have to follow a certain path, you can just climb over the mountain and see what's on the other side? And he said, yeah, if you want to, you can spend all day over there if you want to. And how is that possible? And the it was mind-boggling to me the amount of work that I it's no wonder when I would sometimes talk to Mark that he sounded like he'd been up for 5 days in a row, because he probably had. They were just building this massive, massive world. There was nothing that had been done. I think I'm pretty safe in saying that prior to Skyrim on that scale. They kind of blew the doors off and said, okay, we're gonna take this beyond where a game has traditionally gone, and it is not just this small narrow path that you have to follow. The whole world is out there for you to explore. And I was so impressed with that idea. Not only that it was an idea and a great idea and a really compelling one, but ideas are a dime a dozen. They did the work. They made it work. And that was just the extraordinary thing to me about it. So I'm enormously proud to have, if I had only had one line, one character, I'd still be proud to be a part of Skyrim. So,
The thing about the Elder Scrolls games is they just keep getting bigger. I mean, Skyrim was massive. I can't imagine how big Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be once it finally gets released.
yeah, well, yeah.
Well, we're at about the halfway point, guys. So I did want to reiterate something. Plenty of you have already messaged Visioncon directly, your viewers' comments and questions, or put them in the live chat. But if you guys are new to the show, first off, welcome. But if you guys haven't already, you guys do have the opportunity to either message Visioncon directly or put in the live chat your viewers' comments and questions, and we're going to get those at the very end. And with that, we're going to go our final character analysis. So this character is the central character from a game series that I would argue, without this game series, the stealth action genre, which is one of the most popular video game genres out there, would not be as prevalent as it is today. So for our final character, let's talk about the legendary Garrett from the Thief franchise. So to wrap us up, just give us a brief overview of the character, any fun anecdotes involved with getting to playing the part, anything at all, Stephen.
Well, as we talked about in the beginning, Zach, he was my entry into the world of gaming, and I couldn't think of a better a better entree because it was just he is again uh, so so well written and just a compelling character. You know, a lot of the people who worked on Thief ended up going on to Bethesda, and my experience of working with them has had carried over to working on Skyrim and Fallout and so forth, and so it really was a very important character stepping stone time in my life. And when I first auditioned for Garrett, he was supposed to be a Scottish spy, and that was the voice that I came up with for the character that I used in that audition back in May of 1997. When I came in to meet with Eric Brocious in December of 97, they had completely scrapped that idea and had gone with a medieval setting. And they really didn't have a sound in their head for what they wanted Garrett to sound like. So I sat with with Eric, and we just played. We tried various voices, higher, lower, faster, accent, no accent, and eventually came up with the voice for Garrett. And um, I'm pretty proud of it, actually. I think it was I think at one point I was thinking, oh, I'm just doing Clint Eastwood. But uh, sometimes the ability to fool yourself can really work in your favor. And when I listen to it afterward, it doesn't sound a bit like Clint Eastwood.
I was about to say.
Yeah, but in the process, I created a voice with my own set of equipment that was interesting and unique, and I think the sort of hushed, whispery tone really worked for what he was all about: sneaking around and being quiet and stealing things. And then the characters that they surrounded him with, the worlds that they built for him, were all really fascinating as well. So that was just a privilege. Looking Glass was headquartered in a very kind of corporate-looking set of offices, office buildings in North Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I would go there, and there were all these people in suits walking around, and all the other offices and so forth, and then you'd go into their offices, and it was just this incredible beehive of activity and people who were hunched over terminals and just staring at screens, and they looked like they hadn't left since 2 months before. And but the energy in that space was just amazing, and I could just tell that I was just working with really smart, creative, fun people. And the minute I went into those offices, I said to myself, I don't care what this is, I want to be part of it.
Well, and the hard work paid off. I mean, these games stand up even today, which is mind blowing. When the first one came out in like the mid to late '90s.
Yeah. Yeah. 97 was when I auditioned for it, and we didn't start recording until December of that year. So I think it was late 98 that the game came out, and it still really, really holds up. And the one that followed is a particular favorite of mine, too, Thief 2, in part because again, they had discovered that I had a certain facility. So they also offered me the lead villain in that one, which was really fun as well, Karis. And so,
Like I said, it was also pivotal in the stealth action genre development to where it is today. So, with that, did you ever expect that this series, which let's remember you got added into late '90s, did you ever expect the series to be as influential and groundbreaking, quite frankly, as it was?
I have kind of lived by a motto for most of my life that has served me pretty well, and I don't always follow it. And I often talk about it facetiously, but it is this: keep your expectations low, and you're never disappointed, and frequently pleasantly surprised.
Dang.
And so I didn't know what to expect, man. This is the first time I'd ever worked on a game, and they were paying me to stand in a room and make funny voices, and what's better than that?
The life.
So and working with really fun, nice people too, and smart people, and so I just loved those sessions. And if the game had not uh, I mean, the fact that I was working with all this creative energy and people who knew how to direct that energy too, I guess did give me hopes and expectations that something good would come of it. Having said that, I think everyone who worked on those games was disappointed to a certain extent that because they knew they were good. We all knew they were good. That we were doing groundbreaking work and that something important was happening. A next step was taken, and yet they didn't really catch on in sales wise the way we had all hoped that they would. So in that way, they were a little they were financially disappointing, I guess. But man, there is nothing to be ashamed of about the actual product itself.
This might be a bit ironic since it's all about a guy who's stealing things, but the fact that it didn't catch on sales wise is criminal. So I do recommend you guys watching right now check out the series. Like they said, it really does hold up.
Yeah, well, nobody went to see The Wizard of Oz when it first came out either.
There you
So
go.
it's there. I mean, that's showbiz, and it, yeah,
Them's
it's
the breaks.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Even with a turkey that you know will fold, you may be stranded out in the cold. Still,
Ooh,
you can trade it for a sack of gold. Let's
there it is.
on with the show.
Well, the next thing we want to do a bit of a depart from the characters, and I actually want to explore the job itself because Stephen, a lot of people who watch this show or come to physical Vision cons to meet these guests obviously are here to meet the wonderful guests that we have on. One of which is sitting right before me, but the other reason they come because they either want to get in the entertainment industry or already are and just want to know what to do next, kind of level up their game. So I want you to keep that in mind with these next two questions.
Mhm.
The first of which involves rejection. So, like I always say, guys, rejection is just a part of life, no matter how you look at it. However, if there was ever an industry where rejection is most prevalent, it would definitely be your industry, Stephen, which is, of course, the entertainment industry. So, for the folks watching at home that either, like I said, want to get in the entertainment industry or already are and just want to know what to do next, how would you advise them to handle rejection once it inevitably comes?
Uh, First of all, accept that it will come. I don't know anybody who has become an actor and or a musician or anything involved in the arts who hasn't experienced it at one time or another. And don't dwell on it because there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, you seldom will be able to definitively say why somebody didn't hire you for a job. The reasons are as various as you can imagine. So dwelling on it is only destructive. It's getting in your own way. This is all really easy for me to say, but I'm not also going to pretend that there haven't been times when I really wanted something and I didn't get it and I was disappointed. And I just have to live with that. I think there comes a point in any career in the arts where if you're getting nothing but rejection time after time after time after time, and it's 10 years and you've been doing this, you probably ought to think about doing something else. Uh, and it's always good to have not only a plan B, but a plan C, because sometimes those plan Bs and plan Cs will lead you to uh, places that where you can use your art that you didn't even know about. Growing up in a small town as I did, all I knew about acting was going to the movies every Saturday afternoon. And I thought, okay, that's what it's like to be an actor. You get to be a movie star. I had no idea that when I when I took on this task of seeing what I could accomplish as an actor, that there were all these other applications out there. I mean, Thief is a perfect example of that. It was the casting call was for somebody to do something on a CD-ROM project. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know what I was going in for. I just thought it was going to be a fun job, and I needed the work. So I was happy to go for the audition and do my best. You just never know. And sometimes those alleyways that you go down thinking that this is just going to be another dead end open up into whole new worlds. And that's been, I guess, if I had any advice to give anybody in starting out in the arts in any art form, is stay open, and keep yourself safe, but say yes too.
Sure.
So, there's that famous story, and I read this a long, long time ago about the first time John Lennon met Yoko Ono. It was at a show of hers in a gallery, and um, he climbed up this ladder. She had done an installation on the ceiling of the gallery, and you climbed up this ladder to see what it was. And there was a little door, and you opened up that little door, and underneath it just said yes. And
Aw.
John Lennon said that if he had climbed up that ladder and opened that door and it had said anything else, he probably would have walked out of that gallery and never thought anything more about the experience or the artist, but it changed his life. And I think yes is a very, very powerful thing. I think it's important to know what you're saying yes to, and also to keep yourself safe, because there are people who will ask you to do things that you should most definitely say no to because they're not good for you.
Yeah.
So, but being open, and I think that I've talked to people over the years who have said, I want to be an actor, but I only want to do this. Well, if you only do that, how are you going to get to that if you haven't also done this and you haven't the experience? So there's building a resume involves saying yes to a lot of different kinds of experiences, and that resume and that experience, that body of experience, is what's going to help you be a more effective actor when you do land that job.
I love that. Well, before we move on, I did want to reiterate one last time, guys, that if any of you haven't already, message Visioncon directly your viewers, comments, and questions, or put in the live chat. Now is your last chance to do so, because after this next question, we're going to go right into viewers, comments, and questions. So you've been doing this profession for years, Stephen, both all sorts in the entertainment industry. So what would advice, just general advice, would you give the folks watching at home? Perhaps advice maybe you wish you had when you got into the arts.
Um, I'm going to be a little bit evasive about that, Zach, because
Go
I
for it.
think everybody's different.
Okay.
Everybody brings different life experiences, different skills to the table, and I'm not sure that there is any advice that's one size fits all. Um, I think that being realistic about what you've done, what your experience is, what your opportunities are where you are, both age-wise, geographically. Um, Clearly, there are certain parts of the country where if you want to be a major movie star, you're going to be better off living than you know
Sure.
the North Pole. Uh, so and get as much experience and training as you can, and I think it's a balancing act, and one can often uh, cancel out the other, or make up for the other. I guess is what I'm trying to say. So if you got a lot of experience, but not that much training, that might work in your favor. And if you got a lot of training but not that much experience, you're just coming out of a college program or a graduate program and pursuing your degree, and you don't have the experience yet. Well, you've got that body of knowledge to and maybe the connections to uh, further you. It's a tough question to answer for those reasons because everybody's situation is different. But if you really love it, if it's really what feeds you, you got to try, huh? You know, you just got to try and see what happens. Have a backup plan. Try to let your backup plan not be um, a what am I trying to say? Um,
Feasible?
well, if your backup plan is also, if you want to be an actor and you're also going to be, uh, say, the person stage managing, it's very those are compatible professions, but they're not necessarily going to give you the experience that you need to do the other. So I think sometimes it's good if your backup plan is completely unrelated to what you're trying to do. That's just my opinion. And probably there'll be people out there saying that's the stupidest idea they ever heard. And it may be, but they
Well,
need more ideas if they think that's the stupidest.
and we might have to retailor that question because it is inherently flawed. Like as you said yourself, there is no like one clear path. Everyone has a different path to
Exactly.
get to this point. And like case in point, we're at episode 70. So we've had over because some episodes have more than one guest on them, but we've had at least 70 guests, all with no identical paths to get to where they are. So I guess to ask any specific info, I mean, you really just have to tailor your own path to how it plays out.
Yep. Yeah, and you're absolutely right about that. And I think that's fascinating. We did a Fallout panel back in late November, early December of last year, where I actually got to have a kind of Zoom event with uh, a lot of the other people who worked on Fallout, a lot of the other companions, and Courtney Taylor, and people whose work I just admire so much. I'd never met a one of them, and
Really?
you know, because we all work individually, and every now and again I'll run into somebody in the studio and go, "Oh, you're oh." But uh, and because I'm based on the East Coast of the U.S. and a lot of that work happens on the West Coast, you know, they're not the people I run into when I go to the grocery store. Um, so that was really, really fun, and just getting to hear all their backgrounds. And man, everybody on that call had another wonderful story about how they got into it, and it was just it was terrific hearing all those different paths that people had gone down. And some people, you know, I think many of us, I think one of the things that is really true about a lot of voice actors is that uh, some of us never set out to be voice actors because we didn't know when we started that that was even a possibility. It was something that we came to because we just wanted to be actors of one kind or another, and this wonderful opportunity opened up that we couldn't have even imagined as kids.
Yeah, but Man, it's one of the most popular industries in the entertainment industry now.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Alrighty, guys. Well, like I said, we're going to stick the plug zone to make sure we have all the time for all of your guys' questions. So, real quick, I'm going to open the messenger and check out the chat to read them all. So, the first one is going to kick us off. It's going to be from Ray Lane, who said, "Hey, Stephen, I just wanted to know what are some of your favorite parts about voicing Nick Valentine?"
Oh, we talked about this early on, but I have to go back to just, it was so exciting just to get those scripts. And oftentimes I don't see a script until I walk into the booth and they're handed to me. And especially once we had done a few sessions with Nick, oh boy, it's going to be another Nick day. And to get those lines and just see where his story was going and what opportunities it afforded me as an actor to, stretch and work these chops. That was really the fun part. And then there was this other, at the other end of that experience was the just seeing the reaction, just finally when the game came out, hearing people and how excited they were about Nick and that he was a lot of people's favorite companion and stuff was so gratifying. Yeah. Oh.
All right. So Morgan tuned in and said, "Are people able to check out your music? And if so, where can we find it?"
Ah, well, good luck. Um, no, my music is still pretty much only my music.
Mhm.
I don't play professionally anymore, and I don't have anything online, I don't think, and so I still enjoy making music. It's a great passion of mine, but sorry, there's nothing out there at the moment.
All right. So Connor tuned in and said, "Hey, Mr. Russell, I just want to know if you had any underrated Fallout 4 characters that you wish had more of an audience." So I think what he means by that are there any characters in the Fallout 4 universe that you think are underrated?
That not just mine or just in the
I mean, you
whole.
can add yours if you'd like.
Oh, yes, I think all of mine are underrated. They should. Boy, I don't know. Boy, that's a tough one. Uh, wow. What would I? Let me think about that. That's a really interesting question.
For sure,
Uh,
we can come back to that one.
I love Courtney's work for one thing. She just blows me away. I just think, I mean, everybody's so good, but uh, uh, her, her reads are often so perfect. I mean, she just nails every line. It's like, how does she do that?
She was a delight to interview during a previous episode, and she said a similar thing about Nick, actually.
Oh, really? Oh, how nice. Oh,
So Charlotte tuned in and said the same question that she always does, which is, besides when you're not working, what are some of your favorite hobbies?
I'm a huge reader, and I've on my website. I've even recently posted some of the things that I've been reading. That's kind of the beginning and the end of every day for me, and one of the reasons I think why I gravitate toward the writing end of things when I'm looking at scripts, and why I love working with Bethesda, and why I loved working with a lot of the folks that I've worked with over the years, because the writing is just so sharp. So that's a big one. I love to travel. I love going out for walks in beautiful places, and I'm a pretty simple person.
Well, Ryan tuned in and also submitted the same question he's voiced for each episode, which was, are there any characters that you voiced throughout the years that you wish had more of a spotlight?
Um, well, I was so chuffed when the guard that I did in the Thief series, who uh, became known among the fans as Benny, took on this life of his own, and people started commenting about him, and I just thought that was terrific. So that was kind of an example of a character that I didn't really think about very much at the time that it was really fun to have pop out and take on a more of a life. When I did the dog too,
Barnabas?
yeah, I had so much fun with the dog, and I always thought he never gonna got his due. That's a dog's life, isn't it?
It is. I mean, a talking dog. Like, well, it's not love.
Well, he's a dog, so he's a dog. So he's a dog, and he gets to talk, and people should pay attention to that because if you're a dog and you can talk, then there's something that people gotta notice because not every dog can do that.
There it is. All right. So Zachary, not me, tuned in and said, since you've done the 2010 demo voice of Booker DeWitt in Bioshock Infinite, I know you've been asked this before, but what was your take on Troy Baker's role as Booker?
Oh, I think he did a great job. I mean, he's the legend. He's one of the great voice actors of our time. So, was I disappointed that I didn't get to do the game? Sure. Yeah, that was one of those. That was one of the ones that got away that I would have liked to have had. But when I heard what he was doing, I also kind of understood what they were going for in casting him that perhaps I wasn't able to bring them. So that was fine. It's spilt milk, and I'm glad he got the job and did such a fantastic job with it too. Yep, good stuff.
Want to end us up. So Chris tuned in and said, hey, Steven, is there a video game franchise that you would have liked to have a voice in, and as who in that franchise?
Boy, that's a tough one. I wish I could have been a voice in Oregon Trail.
Oh,
I would have had so much fun. And when I would watch my kids play that, I would just think, what are these people doing? They don't sound like they're on the Oregon Trail at all. Oh, that's a terrible thing to say, but
no, I mean, between us, Steven, I agree with you.
well, that was early days too, so
I mean, I suppose you can't fault them, but
yeah, no, I don't know. That requires. I'll have to get back to you on that one. That's an interesting question. As I say, I tend not to think like that. I'm happy to have the work that I have, and delighted for other people to get the work that they get, and I don't really dwell on the things I'm not doing.
All right, so we have time for two more questions. The next one's going to be from
Oh,
Sydney.
come on.
All right. Well, the next one's from Sydney, who asked, do you do live signings or autographs?
Sure do. Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to come to Visioncon sometime in person if we could ever make that happen. When we get beyond our current situation, that would be fun. So, yep.
Right. And then the last one is going to be from Carter, who actually just wanted to ask, what is your favorite part about being an actor?
I like the part where I walk down my driveway and open up the mailbox and there's a check inside.
That's honest.
Yeah, but it isn't the truth. Because as somebody who started out doing community theater, obviously I would do this, and I have done this, even if there wasn't a check involved. Um, the question was asked earlier about my hobbies, and I talked about how much I love to read. And I think a constant in my life and in my interests from as early as I can remember is I love stories. I love what stories uh, do to human beings. I love that we are able to hear about someone else's tale and empathize with that person and enter into the life of that person and feel what they're feeling. And by doing so, understand more of what our fellow human beings on this planet are all about, their concerns, their trials, their hopes, their frustrations. And I think that's a very stories are very, very powerful things. And to be in a medium where you get to be part of a story, and especially in voice acting in games where the player themselves is so integrally integral to the advancement of the story, and you as an actor get to interact with them in a very direct way. That's a huge, huge gift, Zach. And I'm grateful that my path has enabled me to do that in any medium, and especially in this medium. I think it's been really fun. So the to be in a story. That's all I ever wanted to do, was to be in a story.
Now that is the Stephen Russell answer. And a thing that I can't think of a better way to end off on. So, ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 70 of Visioncon Live. But before we wrap things up, Stephen Russell, you've given us plenty of great advice, sage-like wisdom all throughout this interview, more than most. But is there any final words you'd like to leave us on? Any more sage-like wisdom? Anything at all?
Yeah. Be good to yourselves. Get vaccinated if you haven't already, because that's the only way we're going to get back to seeing each other in live events. And yeah, I think that's about it for me tonight.
Oh, couldn't have said it better myself, Stephen. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 70 of Visioncon Live. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I'm your host, Zach Wilson. But much more importantly, this has been my very special guest, Stephen Russell. Make sure to check out all the links down in the description box below. And until next time, guys, always remember that life's better when you have friends to share it with.